So all of the elements of Once Human have actually proved to be very strong, whether using shock, fire, or frost. And I wanted to obviously do a setup based around frost since I haven't done one yet. I've been seeing the homies Haterade and Matt Goes Buck actually using these a lot, and I was like, you know what, I gotta give this a shot and see how it is myself. So here is a fun little frost setup that can do all of the new hard mode endgame content with quite a whole lot of ease. So let's try it out. So first things first, we got to talk about the deviant that we're going to be using for this setup, and that is going to be that polar jelly. You're able to acquire one of these polar jellies by doing the PvP mode within the world, that car that drives around the cargo event, as it's known as, and being able to get one from there. It reads, continuously deal frost damage to surrounding enemies and force them to move forward to you. Increases frost damage received by surrounding targets by 31%. If frost vortex are formed inside the radius, create additional ice spikes. So this is just really great all around for the fact that it's able to increase that frost damage we're already going to be doing, and it's just going to just continuously keep up just some damage on a target. Now, the main weapon we're going to be using for this setup is going to be the Icy Rain. I'm actually going to be talking about another weapon that we could use for this setup later in the video in the min-maxing section, but for now, this is the one that we're going to be using, mainly for the fact that it is acquirable within the world from one of the mysterious chests. I can't remember exactly which one, so unfortunately, you will have to probably check that out yourself, but it is acquirable within the main world itself to get the blueprint. It reads, crit hit grants a 40% chance to trigger Frost Vortex. When Frost Vortex is created, auto reload 15% of bullets and +1 to Frost Vortex. So let's look at that keyword right there. What is Frost Vortex? It's the continuous debuff, a continuous damage, and an AoE all in one. Trap enemies within a 4.5 meter radius and inflict 30% PSI intensity. Status damage per second for 4 seconds. Up to 2 Frost Vortex may exist at a time. Additional damage is Frost Element, cannot crit, cannot strike weak spots, and will not decay with distance. And then we have the number factor there as well. So for this setup, we are going to be obviously kind of diving a bit into crit, even though this isn't going to be affected by crit. But the biggest reason is for the fact that that top part of the gun itself, crit hit chance, a 40% chance to trigger Frost Vortex. We want those Frost Vortexes because it's going to give us a good amount of damage. The mod we're going to be using on our Icy Rain is that Shattering Ice. When an enemy at the center of the Frost Vortex is defeated, deal 50% PSI intensity ice damage to enemies within a 1 meter radius 1 time. This is the best perk I found so far. If you are using a setup like this, feel free to comment down below and let me know something else you like. But this is obviously great for those mobbing scenarios. As always, the second weapon we're going to be using for this setup is going to be the recurve crossbow because of that bullseye damage, the fact it's going to give us that extra vulnerability. And then the main perk we're going to be using on it as well is that vulnerability amplifier for that additional vulnerability damage. Now we're going to be running a couple different armor pieces. The main set we're going to be running is that Lone Wolf set. Biggest reason for that is that increased crit rate. The third part of it reads, get 1 stack of Lone Shadow with every 2 weapon crit hit. Lone Shadow crit damage is +6% for 30 seconds and stacks up to 8 times. So right there, a 48% chance just if you want to do that. And then if you want to go all the way to the top at that 4, increase max lone stacks at 10. And after a kill, crit rate +8% for 2 seconds. Obviously, the better the crit hit rate, the better chance we have to create those Frost Vortexes, which is going to complement the next armor piece we're going to talk about. And the next piece is going to be the Frost Tactical Vest. This is something you can find in chests in the open world. And the key effect reads, Frost Vortex generates ice spikes that deal frost damage of 100% psi intensity. So obviously it's just giving that a lot more damage for the fact that it's just going to create those ice spikes that are then going to damage for more, damage. The last thing I have on here is just a Falcon mask. Obviously, this is kind of a flex spot in whatever you want. I just have this calibrated to 6 right now, so it's just my main choice. Now, let's talk about mods we're going to be using across the board here. First up on my helmet, I'm using Fateful Strike. Cannot deal weak spot damage, but my crit rate is increased and my crit damage is increased. I just really like it for that extra crit rate so that I'm able to obviously constantly create that. those frost vortexes with the ice spikes and everything with there. Obviously, you're probably going, well, weak spot damage, I'm not getting that. Well, trust me, like, look at the look at the gameplay. We're shredding everything pretty fast because of those ice spikes. We're wanting to focus more into the element itself and that crit rate so that we're able to create those vortexes as much as possible. On our mask, I'm running a flame resonance for the extra status damage, and I'm also got one with like a little bit of crit hit there. On our chest piece, I'm using another one of those so that I get that extra status damage. You definitely want to focus more into status damage, in my opinion, over elemental, but elemental obviously is going to be helpful too. I think just the multiplier that we are reading from, status damage is more important. On our pants, dead shot, every crit hit from a non-melee weapon grants plus 5% crit damage up to 45%. I really just like this just because we're going to be constantly doing those crit chances and everything, so getting that extra damage is nice. On my glove, status enhancement, so that I get that extra 20%. And then finally on my boots, slow and steady, our melee weapon status damage is increased by 8%. And then when I'm above 90% health, I have an additional 8% there. Now let's go between our override tree real quick, just kind of like going around it. Deviation master for that extra damage whenever we have our deviant out. Automatic weapon enhancements so that we get that extra damage from our SMG, especially again, icy rain. It's really great to have that. Sprint so that we get that extra movement speed and reduced running stamina cost. Status enhancement so we get that extra status damage. Master tactician so that whenever I throw a grenade or a Molotov or something like that, I'm getting extra 25% damage to great ones. Rapid aid for that better healing all around. Sustain suppression, killing an enemy with continuous damage such as a frost vortex increases that continuous damage by 20%. Obviously something great to have for mobbing scenarios. And then finally, tactical combo for that extra weapon damage for 4 seconds after I reload my weapon. Now, as always, we like to kind of talk about some other ways we can min-max or change this around. Obviously, if you want to swap out the Icy Rain for this Abyss Glance, that is also a great choice. This is the weapon I've been mainly seeing the homie Haterade using. I've been seeing Matt Goes Buck mainly using Icy Rain, but the damage they've gotten between both of them look very similar and also just great all around. For this one, hitting enemies 20 times triggers that Frost Vortex. Weak spots count as 2 hits, and the closer to the center of the Frost Vortex, the higher the Frost Vortex damage. Obviously great all around for this Frost-centered build. Other armor pieces, the Stealth Walker Frost Vortex collapses in the center and keeps pulling in 100%, 20% of enemies within Frost Vortex. Not that great in my opinion, probably could pick something better. Doyen's Cloak, when the Frost effect ends, deal Frost damage equal to 50 of the total damage dealt to the target during the Frost period. Again, I think you're better off just going with the chest piece that we have in this setup for the extra ice spike damage. And then you can definitely go into Shelter Set if you really want for that extra elemental damage. But again, with this setup being so focused on getting crits to get that Frost Vortex active, I feel like this kind of falls by the wayside, but it will be something that later down the road we are going to test out. But I would say, at least for now, probably Lone Wolf or Falcon would be the best option. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys really enjoy it. Again, please always let me know down below other setups that you're interested in seeing. I really appreciate just ideas and everything. But so far, pretty much every single build I've been trying out has been able to do endgame content and has just been enjoyable to use. So again, I'm just glad that they were able to kind of succeed in that regard with, the whole looter shooter aspect of the game. But again, give a thumbs up on the video, helps me a whole hell of a lot in the algorithm. Comment, subscribe, become a member, and follow me over on YouTube and Twitter at Byrdman778. Guys, thank you so much. I hope you have a great night, day, whatever it may be.